Welcome to Series 3, Episode 9 of the In Her Financial Shoes podcast. Welcome to the In Her Financial Shoes podcast with me, Catherine Morgan, founder of The Money Panel, helping you learn the small behavioural and practical steps to take towards being financially resilient. Listen in each week where we talk about that taboo subject of money. Listen to real life stories, step into our guest shoes and be left feeling 100% confident and in control. Oh, and we hate financial jargon, so don't expect any here. Small steps, big wins, let's go. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. So in today's episode, I'm going to be interviewing a lady called Deborah O'Grady. Now, Deborah was introduced to me actually we share the same PR team. So Women Supporting Women, Deborah came to me and shared her story with me. And I wanted to bring her onto the podcast today to give Deborah an opportunity to talk through her own personal experience and her personal story about how she went from working as a high-valued, experienced marketeer who's been the brains behind like many disruptive brands such as Silent Night, Nivea for Men and Iron Brew. One of the first questions I asked her actually was whether she had any access to like the models from like Nivea maybe or Iron Brew, which you'll hear about in the first few minutes of our conversation, just for a bit of a joke. I'm not a man eater, by the way. So she's been like the brains behind some of these huge disruptive brands. And in this particular podcast episode, I've asked Deborah about how did she kind of transition from working in a high salaried, high impact corporate organization into delivering her services as the brand coach. She's a brand strategist and coach to smaller businesses. So I was really interested in hearing about her story. So in this episode, we're going to talk through Deborah's opinion on how much she believes you should be sharing your own personal story when you talk about your business and in your branding messages, how she herself dealt with money blocks when she transitioned from going from a really successful consultancy into working with small business owners, the importance of investing in yourself, how to discover your superpower. And there was a really interesting question fairly early on in this interview where Deborah talks about like how to find your superpower, and the question relates to supermarkets. So watch out for that question. We dig a little bit around niche and the importance of niche. And actually, what does niching actually mean? And we kind of finish off with Deborah leaving some tips for you about what you should do in order to create importance around your branding. So I really hope that you enjoy this message. This is particularly valuable for those of you that are either running businesses right now and struggling with your message, or indeed if it's something that you really want to do and you're sitting in an employed job right now and you're really not very happy and you want to start creating something for yourselves, but you don't know where to start. I really hope that this episode will give you some really, really great sort of the teachings, but also I think there's nothing better than hearing from somebody's own personal experience as to how they transitioned from being in a high paid corporate job into running her own business. So without further ado, I welcome to the podcast, Deborah O'Grady. So a massive welcome to Deborah O'Grady on today's podcast episode. Good morning, Deborah.
Hi, Catherine.
Deborah is a brand strategist and coach and has been in the business for over 20 years. She's run her own successful business for over 8 years. And we're going to be talking about the importance of branding, the power of your brand, and how this can relate back to, making money and profit in your business and in your life. So a massive welcome to the podcast, Deborah. And actually, you were introduced to me from we share like the same PR team, Chocolate PR, who are incredible, and it's so lovely to be able to interview other women in business that are just like rocking this space right now. And I know you've got some really exciting things to share with us at the end of this podcast about things that you're doing in your business.
Yeah, that's right.
But I just first of all, Deborah, just for the purpose of people who perhaps haven't come across your work before, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your mission in the world and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked for big brands in different sectors for a long time, working at different agencies in London and Yorkshire, finally setting up my own agency and branding the whole of Hugo Boss's fragrances, bringing Iron Brew to boys and Nivea to men. So I kind of started looking into entrepreneurs and seeing what they were doing. And I think there's a huge disconnect with entrepreneurs and smaller businesses where they're not actually addressing the brand and seeing the power of their brand. So there's a huge process that the large brands go through, which I've taken many through. And I kind of wanted to see how I could change that process to have more of a meaningful experience for entrepreneurs. So my mission is to bring that big brand experience to create a brand that entrepreneurs feel really confident and have absolute clarity with. So
that's really interesting. Is it like, so my first question that came to mind when you just talked about your introduction. So first of all, did you like get to meet any like hunky Hugo Boss men models when you were?
Yeah, I've done lots of, I've been in lots of shoots, but it's not glamorous. So when I worked with Hugo Boss, I practically lived in Geneva Airport.
Really?
It was just, like you had to go, I went there for a meeting and I was, there and back in a day. Things were crazy because you had to get things out to market ASAP. So it's not as glamorous
as you expect. That's so disappointing.
And the shoots are even less glamorous.
Yeah,
believe me. Yeah,
I bet. So from a branding perspective then, so you mentioned there about like taking those lessons and experience that you've had with working with some major brands, helping smaller business owners to get really clear on their message and their brands. Yeah. Would you say that the kind of strategy behind that is the same for small business owners as it is for large corporate organizations?
I think it's more personal. I think setting up a business, it's a fast track in self-development. You're saying this is me and you're promoting me.
Yeah.
So I've been investing in personal development for 20 years. And I truly think that branding is very, very much interconnected with that. And I actually went and started training in life coaching. And it wasn't for me, but what I got from that was tremendous, that I could marry my skills and see kind of blocks with clients, because, I could create an amazing strategy, a beautiful visual identity. But if you're not feeling it and you're not clear on it and you're not confident with it, that will stop. You will not be successful.
What kind of challenges would prevent people from because I think we've talked about this on the podcast quite a lot actually about like money blocks and self-belief blocks, that we don't believe that that perhaps we don't believe that we're deserving of creating a successful business, and that maybe because of a message that we heard growing up around money, or maybe an experience that we've had in the past. And I mean, so many women that I coach have real traumatic experiences that have happened. Maybe they've been bullied at work and they've been told you're never going to achieve this, or they're at school and their teacher said to them, you're never going to achieve this. And it subconsciously that has a huge impact, doesn't it, on our own belief?
Hugely. Yeah. I mean, I think more so for the generation of 35 plus, because we were brought up in a generation where there was a lot of "you're not good enough" messages, you could do better, so we've not everybody, but there are deep rooted beliefs in that generation. Whereas there's a totally new kind of energy with the millennials. So I did some research for a client who was a millennial business coach, and her language to her clients, all her sales pages, everything was all about it was empowering, and you can do this, and I'm with you. The research came back, and it was like 91% of millennials felt that they were a boss already, that they were a leader.
Right.
So all those messages weren't hitting, because that tone of voice was just, that's not me. You're not talking to me. I won't buy from you. So we changed the language, and the business just changed just from the language. And that was based on research and a repositioning. So,
that's such an important, let's just unpick that a little bit here, actually, because what you just mentioned there is so important, that, that doing that analysis, that research, that competitor analysis, research on your audience is so important. And people are so afraid, I think, when they first set out their business about niching, this concept of niching.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling this when I first started my business. I remember with my first business coach, he was asking me about who I was going to be niching down and talking to. And I had this massive fear and block that, well, if I niche, then I'm not going to attract enough people. And it was honestly the best decision I ever made, because as soon as you niche, and obviously the super niche you can get even better, because then your message and your language can be very much then specific to the challenges and pain points of that particular audience.
Yeah, you need to be speaking to that kind of one person, but you don't necessarily have to niche in sector. Like, niching is a really overused term, and it's really difficult to understand sometimes, because I think as well, in this online world, there's so many so-called experts giving their so-called views. And I think you've got to be wary about who you're listening to, and find out where that expertise is coming from. So LinkedIn is great for that. If you're listening to someone's opinion and you think, oh my God, this is really good, and then you're like, is it? Go look at their expertise, see where they've come from. If they've not been a business coach and they've worked in education all their life, and then they're talking about business, is that best advice? So I know I'm kind of digressing slightly, but I think the whole thing about niching is it's also about positioning. So it's not necessarily, I'm going to serve women. They're going to be this age. They're interested in this is their pain point, this is what motivates them to buy. I think it can be basically kind of niching based on what you can deliver. So I think it's understanding what your superpower is, and who is that person that is looking for that. I think that's what's really, really important.
How would you begin to understand what your superpower is?
Okay, well, that's my superpower. I think because I've been doing this for so many years, there is this understanding that as soon as I start talking to somebody, it's like my brain goes into kind of, I'm kind of fact finding all the time. So when I'm working with a client, I'm actually asking those questions that are going to give me those results. So I take them through a journey. So I'll be kind of asking them questions which sound like I'm repeating and repeating, but it's just a different way how they feel comfortable in giving me the answers. And it's all there. We all know. Like, as soon as I connect a client with their superpower, the best feedback I can get is, oh my God, that was easy. Why didn't I think of that? Because then it's right.
Can you give me an example of a question that you would ask somebody in that kind of discovery process to get them thinking about what that superpower might look like?
Yes. So if you, one of them is, and a lot of clients like this, is if you were a product in a supermarket, what would you be? And also the other one is if you were a gadget. So that talks about skills. So I've had all sorts of gadgets. And then I've had people identify with certain brands. And that really helps me kind of get inside their head, because if you ask somebody, I need to find out all about you, they're going to dump a whole lot of beliefs on you that aren't true. They're going to probably not tell you the things that they're awesome at, because they sometimes don't know what they're awesome at. And so for me, it's kind of finding those questions out. That's my job. And so it's asking those kind of really deep questions. I worked with an agency owner in London, and this was a guy actually. And I always ask a client, like, what are you doing in 5 years' time? Where are you? What are you doing? And I often ask clients to actually close their eyes with this, like really go deep, like, where are you? What does it smell like? What does it feel like?
Yeah.
And this guy described San Francisco. And so then we talked about it, and he was like, actually, I've got loads of opportunities over there. I don't actually want to do the rebrand and stay in London. And it was just that kind of moment. And it was like, yeah, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And that was a real shift.
Yeah.
So this is kind of, it's deep stuff. It's exciting. But I think sometimes a lot of people think branding is superficial, because it is a very kind of a look and a feel. But for you to connect with that right audience, you've got to connect with them emotionally. And the only way you're going to do that is be totally real.
Yeah.
And so it's stripping somebody bare, finding out what they are, and really kind of bringing that to life. And it can be, it's fascinating. One client came to me with this, brilliant business model. We started working through things, and on a questionnaire that she filled in, there was just one tiny comment that said, "Oh, actually, I've also got this blog business." Anyway, so I probed her with it, and her eyes lit up. I mean, she was like, "Oh my God, I love it. It's." And I was like, "Why are you going down this route?" And she had a belief, and this was about bullying actually. A competitor said to her, "If you set up doing anything with this blog business, I will come after you."
Wow.
And so she'd squashed that dream. And that was just a belief that this woman couldn't do anything. And this woman was actually scared at the success that this woman would have, because this idea was bigger, better, shiny, and she could deliver this.
Yeah. And I think that's incredible, isn't it? I've just formed an inner circle mastermind program, and all the ladies in the group are in the position where they're just starting their business. And I would say for quite a lot of women that I speak with that are at that stage, there's so much fear associated with getting themselves out into the world with their message. And you mentioned earlier about being honest and raw.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is to share your own personal story business?
Okay, I have a real opinion on this. I don't believe that everybody should have a sob story, because not everybody does have a sob story. And the whole oversharing, I'm not truly comfortable with that. There's some things that I'll share. There's some things I don't want to share. And I'll share to some people, and I won't want to share. So I'm not an oversharer. I am very open. I'm very honest. But I'm not an oversharer. So I feel like I've been in storytelling sessions, and I've worked with somebody amazing in the US, but I don't believe it should be this kind of sob story. I just don't. Everybody has a story, but a story could be. Oh, it could be anything tiny. It's just the where you began and how you've grown, and any of those aha moments that people can relate to. But this whole story, your story, I think, it's just been blown out of proportion. And I can imagine business owners sat there thinking, I don't have a story. What story shall I have? And it's not about that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your story, Deborah, because when I read your bio about like how didn't you start, like you discovered that rhubarb could dye your hair when you were younger? Like tell us about your story and how did you get into the position that you're in now and running a very successful business?
When I was little, I always thought of these great ideas, and I kind of, I got criticised. People thought I was a bit crazy. I created a festival and lots of stalls, and we raised money for charity. So I kind of was always enterprising, and I was really creative, and I got into the advertising agency. And so I was doing kind of TV, production, press, everything. And that kind of got me into the glitzy world of advertising. But obviously, behind every great brand, there's also the research, the branding. So I kind of worked very heavily with different brands. And then I got to a point where I was moving from agency to agency, and clients were actually asking me, they want to come with me. So one big client said, we want to put lots more NPD, new project development work with you. We want you to brand it. Would you set up by yourself? And so that's what I did. So I set up my own agency. I grew. I actually didn't set that brand up right because I actually had a client to serve, and we had to kind of fly really fast delivering. And that was kind of a brand that happened overnight. Because we had clients to serve. It was kind of, do you want this work? Yeah, okay, we'll set up. Whereas other businesses I've had, it's been a long, drawn-out brand journey. And there's kind of pros and cons to each. But yeah, my story was kind of working with big brands, working with some inspiring people. And then I eventually got totally burnt out by it and very disillusioned with the big corporates. And was people that have worked in the agency industry, it's all about service. Agencies are very fearful of their clients going to somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that means a whole load of redundancies. So you're not protected in an agency. The agency is not protected against losing clients. So you're kind of taught to really overservice these clients. Client service is paramount in that industry. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I got totally burnt out, and I started questioning branding these bigger businesses and the why behind it. And that's what kind of led me to then create this brand.
Right. And like to me as well, like it almost seems like even from day dot, you were this creative, like youngpreneur already. And that's really important, I think, because even just to hear that story about how you discovered that rhubarb can dye your hair, like I just think that's amazing. But it shows how creative your mind was even at that early age. And so it kind of makes logical sense for you to be running a creative business.
Yes.
And I think often that sometimes when we're thinking about where do we start with building an idea, it's just using what naturally is already there, but just kind of putting that out in a way that, inspires you and that makes you want to get out of bed in the mornings.
Yeah.
So I can already kind of see that just feels so natural for you to be this amazing brand strategist and coach because you're a creator.
Yeah, I think as well, people can look at an old career and think, I want to do, that's my old me. And it's not it's part of you and it's part of the skills.
Yeah.
And you've been on a journey to get where you are. And so amalgamating lots of different skills from different career journeys, you don't discount what you've done.
Yeah.
It's not a reinventing, it's a repositioning.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. And so financially, how did you transition from that position into running your own business?
So the first time I went from agency, so 14 years ago, I set up my own agency, and that was great because we had clients before we actually had. I went into business with somebody, which is a different story, and the business was there, so finance wasn't an issue. However, this time that I changed from going corporate to working with smaller businesses, I had a block. I had a big block, and I presumed that female entrepreneurs had small budgets, and how could I really pull my prices down to serve these people, because actually that's what I would do. And so I would say it was a ridiculous amount I'd reduced. It's crazy. And to do that, I had to look at finances elsewhere. So how could I do this without me not having the pressure of the financial pressure? But I knew that it was the right time for me now. I had to do this, and I didn't have any money behind me, and I had to borrow money because I was earning really good. The agency was really successful, and some could call it a nervous breakdown or a spiritual awakening. There was something going on where I just had to do this, and so it was a case of saying to my husband, we had all the renovation work going on. We just bought our house, and I resigned my big account that day. And I felt nervous, scared, crazy, but I knew it was right. I knew I had to do this. And it was been tough. Yeah, it's been really tough, but I knew if I could make money in my other agency and, kind of that 7-figure, I could do that again.
Yeah. And I can just, for those of you that are listening on the podcast, I'm also interviewing Deborah on video right now. Like I can see already, Deborah, that's bringing up a little bit of emotion there. Yeah. And I think for a lot of female entrepreneurs, there are so many emotions that are attached to money. And you talked there about like having this block and belief that you'd have to serve the clients that you felt that you wanted to serve, that you'd have to price your services in a certain way. Yeah. Let's just unpick that a little bit. So where did you start with that money block, and how did you begin to even try and remove yourself from that block so that you could run the sort of business that you wanted to run and serve the type of clients that you wanted to serve?
Okay, so I was known as somebody in my industry. I got work through referral. I ran my own agency, and I often had to wear a mask when I was I was kind of, into sales mode, if you like. And coming into an online industry where I'd only kind of, I'd kind of read the likes of Maria Forleo, read about her, followed her, and all of a sudden I was a newbie. Okay. So I was something in this corporate world. And then I dipped my toes into this new area, and I was a nobody. And that brought up, like, I had to get rid of all this ego stuff that was going on because, I had to start from scratch. So I had no email list. I had no audience. Agencies aren't going to opt in for a freebie, marketing directors. So it was starting from zero. And that rocked my confidence because the business wasn't there. Of course, the business wasn't there. I came from nowhere. And I had to work on my own confidence, and I had my own coach. EFT is just like a godsend to me.
That's the tapping, isn't it?
Oh, it's just amazing.
Energy levels and tapping, yeah.
Yeah, so like the whole tapping thing for me is breaking down a belief that just isn't there. And it emotionally stored in the body, and it's just kind of clearing it.
So you used EFT then to help you to get rid of some of those blocks?
Yeah, I had a coach that I worked with absolutely every week. Because if I hadn't had that support, I think I would have gone back into corporate. I would have gone back at working to the bigger brands. I had lots of wobbles, but I knew that this was my purpose. And I kept going. And the more confidence I got, the more, it wasn't necessarily about the rates I was charging. It was more about the value that I was giving.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is crazy. This needs to be bumped up. This is crazy. This has to be bumped up. And it bumped up. And because for me, when I'm investing money in my business, and for me, I'm very conscious about kind of, if it's too cheap, are these people really kind of experienced? You know, there's the kind of the amount that you're charging has an energy towards it, and there will be I work with a client actually, and she calls it there's kind of 3 price points. I can't remember them off by heart, but it's kind of basically saying there's a poor price, there's the perfect price, and then there's the, you know, the taking the piss part price, you know, the 3 prices. So I think it's what feels right, and you should absolutely sit with it and stay with it.
Yeah, I think this is really important to talk about. And I'm so glad that you've shared your experiences with the listeners, because I remember when I first started my business, I felt like I wanted to help everybody.
Yeah.
Because that's who I am. Like, I want to educate and prepare and equip as many women to be financially resilient as possible.
Yeah.
And so when I first started my business, I wasn't charging enough for my services.
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do in the end was, because, you know, it is what I've learned of growing my business in the last few years, is it's about looking after yourself first before you can serve your clients. Because if you're not looking after yourself, you can't serve your clients to your best ability. And one of the things that I decided to do was to launch a really low cost membership, so that all the people that I really wanted to serve, I can serve in a way that is priced to their price point, that I know is going to create them amazing value. But at the same time, it then frees up more of my time to then focus on my one-to-one work and group programs with other women. Yeah. And so I think that's really important to think about, is if you're in that position where you've got a real giving relationship with money, is to think about, well, how could you serve those clients in a way that isn't necessarily the main part of your business? So for example, could you launch a podcast? Could you write a blog every week? Yeah. Could you do a Facebook Live every week, so that you can still feel like you're giving to the audience that you want to serve, but you obviously at the end of the day, you've still got to make purpose and profit in your business. Otherwise, it's not a business. If you're not making profit from your business and you're not making yourself profit from the business, it's not a business. Yeah. So what other lessons did you learn, Deborah, in growing your business? So you had an EFT coach. Did you have any business coaches or anybody else supporting you during that period?
Yeah, but not necessarily a business coach. More of a kind of transformational coach that helped me look at kind of encompassing everything, because kind of the business that we nowadays run, it has an impact. It's your business, your life, your family, you know, it's kind of interconnected. I got the help that I needed. And I think to grow, you need to invest in yourself and your business always. And I think if you're not investing, there's an absolute block that you don't believe you are going to be the success that you want. Because you're actually parting with money and you're saying, this is my dream, this is what I want, you can get me there and I'll do the rest. And I think there's too many people out there that either aren't willing to invest or they're not willing to put the work in. And I think as coaches, we should really look at those people and turn them away as clients if they're not ready. Because I believe, you know, as a coach, that their success is your success. And so, you know, if there's that kind of disconnect or there's something that they're not ready, you know, I'll say to clients, you need to work on this, this and this, and then come back. Some don't like it, but I can't serve them the best way if there's a kind of a block about what they want to do, or they're too caught up with ego, and I can challenge those things. But I'm not a life coach, I'm not equipped with all of that, and I want to stick to the brand. But yeah, definitely, I think it's identifying those things with your clients, definitely.
Yeah, amazing. Were there any books that you read along your journey that inspired you?
I love Brené Brown.
Yeah, me too.
Like, Brené Brown is just, she's everything you would want a business owner. Like, say if you had a boss, she would be the ultimate boss, wouldn't she? Because, you could kind of, the whole thing that she teaches about vulnerability.
Yeah.
But there's huge power in that.
Mm-hmm.
I've read all Brené Brown's books. I just love them. But
which was your favourite?
I think Dare to Lead, because at the time I was working with quite a few agencies, so I was actually going into marketing agencies that delivered branding for their clients, and I was going in to help them reposition and rebrand. And so with that came a whole host of ego, especially when I was working with all the stakeholders, because who is this woman coming in to tell us to rebrand when this is what we've just won awards based on doing this for our clients? And that was a really tough call. And I really had to deliver. I really had to stand my ground. And I got a lot of backlash from that. And that book really helped me through that, because I was really I was daring to lead. And I wouldn't have been doing my job if I kind of pulled away and just kind of was like, yes, man. I was kind of saying, this is wrong. I'm shining a light on a big issue here.
Yeah.
And you're not going to grow if you don't look at that, because actually the industry perceives you as this, but actually you think you're this and you're not. And when you're dealing with a board that, some people have not bought into hiring you, that takes courage, and it's uncomfortable. And so that book just really, I wish I had some speed dial. I'm sure she could.
God, can you imagine her and like Mary?
Awesome.
She's got her book launch in London in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure whether you're going, but yeah, I'm really looking forward to meeting her. She's another one, another inspiration in my life.
Yeah, awesome.
So, in terms of what in your business then, Deborah, as the brand strategist and coach. So, tell us a little bit about how are you helping to serve your clients for the rest of this year, and how can people follow you who are interested in looking at really, really getting clear on their brand and their strategy and their message?
Well, I'm actually going to be running a free week's worth of brand coaching, absolutely free. Beginning of first week in October. So if people go to my website, which is the brandcoach.co.uk, there I've not got a wait list yet, but if you just sign up online, you'll be the first to know. So this will be about looking deep into your purpose. It's the big piece of work that I always do with my clients. A lot of clients will say about purpose being, I set this up because I didn't want to go back into corporate. Nobody's going to buy from you because of that. Okay, it's a really understanding what is your purpose? Why did you set up to do this, and what value can you give? So there's going to be workshop on that. There's going to be talking about the power of your brand and how it can elevate your business. So yeah, I'm really excited about this kind of freebie event, so that I'm actually helping people that can't afford the power of branding and one-to-one work. Yeah. But then I also have all my packages. I have a 360 experience where it's the full brand experience. It's strategy, ID, So yeah, everything's on my website.
Great. So we'll put a link to that in the show notes and in the blog as well. And yeah, I may even sign up for that myself. But it's an online workshop, isn't it? So yeah, you don't.
Yeah, it's online events. Yeah,
fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing some of the snippets around your own personal story. I think there's so much in there around money blocks and self-worth, and like just some really useful information about how you've progressed through your journey. And it isn't an easy transition to go from earning a successful income to then moving into your own business. And I love the way that you're now helping other businesses to do exactly the same. And I can imagine there's so many learnings and experiences that you have gained to be able to help other women in their business. So thank you so much for today, Deborah. It's been an absolute pleasure to interview you. And for anyone listening on the podcast, we will put a note in the show notes and on the blog where you can go and follow Deborah online and sign up for her free online workshop. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll speak to you all next week. You've been listening to Catherine Morgan's In Her Financial Shoes podcast. If you enjoyed this show, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes. And don't forget, if you're feeling stuck and overwhelmed and want to learn more about being financially resilient, confident and in control, head over to www.catherinemorgan.com.